The Galactic Empire did not conquer the stars with ships alone. It did not rule by fear or fire, but by inevitability. Empires come and go. This one never did. For over 20,000 years, it reigned. Not once did its banner fall from the sky. Not once did an uprising succeed past a single planetary rotation. Its fleets, cold, faceless, and endless, moved like the limbs of a machine too large to comprehend. Species bent the knee not because they were weak, but because they understood resistance was not even part of the simulation. The Empire enforced something it called the equation, a set of principles etched into laws, policies, and energy cycles. It didn't just conquer planets, it optimized them. Crops grew at 104% efficiency. Population levels were stabilized to 3 decimal points. And every civilization it absorbed began to forget that freedom had ever meant something unpredictable. Humans were a late addition, found at the galactic fringe, primitive by imperial standards. But there was something off. They adapted too fast, resisted equations, produced results that the predictive matrices couldn't map. They should have been a minor footnote, another compliant node. But instead, they learned the system, mimicked the tech, and began writing their own code into the Empire's vast networks. That was tolerated at first. Then came the red anomalies. The first one occurred in the Churn Belt. An Empire mining colony went dark. No warnings, no alerts, just silence. A patrol fleet dispatched found nothing. No debris, no wreckage, no data. Just a hollowed-out planet with a core scooped clean, like marrow from a bone. Official reports labeled it a geological collapse. But quietly, a team of data miners found that 3 milliseconds before the colony vanished, it sent a burst transmission. One line of corrupted code and a phrase no Empire AI could parse. The message was, "It's not dead, just asleep." That message was erased from the records. Humans found it anyway. They had their own divisions by then, explorers, hackers, linguists. Not warriors. That wasn't their style. They listened, collected, connected dots that weren't meant to be found. The Empire kept repeating the same lie. Isolated incident. Spatial fault. Solar flare. But the humans saw the pattern. Always on the edge of imperial space. Always in old regions marked restricted. Always erased. And one man, Director Elias Vorn, decided to dig deeper. He didn't ask permission. He knew better. The Empire operated on a need-to-know basis, and humans were kept just informed enough to feel important. Not enough to ask questions. But humans had a flaw. They were stubborn. Vorn was worse. He assembled a team. Quiet. Off-grid. Backed by dead accounts and invisible credits. They tapped into the Empire's archival subnets, those predating the Galactic Standard Year. What they found wasn't just censorship. It was erasure of history itself. Dozens of civilizations marked as assimilated had never left behind any biological traces. No fossils. No ruins. No genetic drift. These weren't absorbed. They were unmade. There was no war. No extinction event. Just the phrase again and again in corrupted records. Warden must not wake. That was when Vorn realized something horrifying. The Empire didn't rule to grow. It ruled to contain. It wasn't an engine of conquest. It was a wall. And humans, being erratic, curious, disobedient, had started to drill holes into that wall without knowing what it held back. The next anomaly came in the Delzit sector. A solar system blinked out of existence for precisely 1.2 seconds before returning. Everything resumed, but in reverse entropy. Trees regrew. Dead animals stood. Data devices played their last recorded message backward. Ships moved, but their ion trails pointed in the wrong direction. Empire AI couldn't explain it. Their predictive systems simply refused to acknowledge it happened. The event was erased. The solar system was quarantined, labeled unstable. Humans sent a probe. They received one image before the feed was terminated. A vast obsidian vault floating in the void, surrounded by fragments of gravitational lensing too precise to be natural. On its surface was an insignia, unknown even to the Empire's language core. The AI flagged it as precursor, but offered no translation. Human analysts cracked it using ancient Earth languages, Basque, Sanskrit, Navajo roots. The symbol translated loosely to, "It is not the end. It is the lock." Vorn knew what that meant. He found dozens of other references buried deep in Empire archives. Mentions of the Vault Network, spread across the galaxy like tumors no one spoke of. Each site surrounded by anomalies, erased colonies, quarantined space. Always suppressed. Always misdirected. The humans cross-referenced star charts, signal leaks, and ancient pre-Empire myths. They found 12 vaults. Only 2 remained observable. The rest either collapsed into black holes or accidentally destroyed by Empire mining initiatives. One vault remained undisturbed. Codename CR8. Vorn and his team launched quietly from a relay moon orbiting SYR station. The Empire never noticed. They used obsolete human engines, too slow and primitive for tracking algorithms to bother flagging. It took them 3 months in deep time flight to reach the system. It had no sun, just a black dwarf, dead light. But something pulsed beyond it, an artificial structure held by gravity nodes. A megastructure the size of Jupiter. And it was humming. No signals. No data. Just resonance. Vorn transmitted a low-frequency human signal. Morse code. Simple. He repeated one word. Why? A pulse returned. Not audio. Not video. A feeling. Human minds on board described it as vertigo. Others described a weight behind their eyes, like being watched by something that had no name. One crew member, Elia, an empath, screamed for 11 minutes and died of neural implosion. Before she died, she spoke a single sentence. Recorded by 6 devices, all simultaneously. The Warden dreams of thunder behind the stars. Then silence. The team began scanning the surface. The material wasn't metal. Not stone. Something in between. Not bound by atomic structure as they knew it. It reflected no known spectrums, except one, the microwave background echo of the Big Bang. In its presence, their AI assistants began to fail. Logic loops spiraled. Predictive systems flatlined. Only human intuition kept the team moving. They found an entrance. Triangular. Lightless. Inside, nothing. No mechanisms. No traps. Just a hall leading to a pit. In the center, a stasis field spinning around an object they couldn't describe. It changed shape depending on angle. It looked like a child, a scream, a galaxy, a hand. It pulsed once. Everything stopped. Vorn shouted to shut it down. But the field wasn't theirs. That's when the Empire arrived. They didn't send a fleet. Just one ship. Silent. Dark hull. No insignias. It docked without request, entered the vault without asking. From it stepped an agent that wasn't biological. Not mechanical. Something in between. It looked at Vorn and said one word. Enough. Then, it activated a kill protocol. One by one, the team members died. Instant cerebral shutdown. Except Vorn. They tried to wipe him, but it didn't work. Something in his mind had already bonded to the vault. The field around the being changed. Adapted. Responded. The agent hesitated. For the first time in 20,000 years, the Empire didn't know what to do. Vorn asked, "What is this?" The return of Elias, Vorn shattered more than protocol. His presence alone triggered over 1,000 AI risk evaluations, each flagging him as a category null anomaly, something that should not exist. No survivor from a vault had ever returned. He should have been a memory. Instead, he was walking with data scorched into his neural tissue. No device could extract it. Nothing could delete it. He vanished 3 hours after docking. No trace. No data stream. No location pings. He was just gone. But something changed in the galactic grid. Unnoticed by most, but not all. Hidden relay points, dead for millennia, came online. Communication lines not seen since the early expansion age began transmitting brief, compressed pings. No code. No language. Just entropy signatures. and one word that spread across the fringe worlds like a myth dragged into daylight: Warden. On the Empire's core worlds, panic was impossible. Emotion had been algorithmically dampened, culturally engineered out of governance. But cracks were forming even there. Military AI started pulling resources from border patrols without explanation. Black box installations began requesting power siphons from civilian sectors. Entire colonies were ordered to evacuate under Code EXNOV, the same classification used when a planet was consumed by a Class 4 singularity. Only 3 humans had clearance to see the pattern. One of them was Daria Heft, a cold data strategist stationed on a forgotten comms array deep in the Velas Drift. She wasn't military. She wasn't a spy. She was better, unpredictable and persistent. She accessed the raw packet logs and realized something the Empire didn't want known. The vault wasn't just humming. It was responding, and not to Imperial tech, to human thought. She decrypted the anomaly patterns using only human linguistic logic. No AI, no Empire decryption schema. The result was staggering. The vault was broadcasting in emotional resonance, matching neural imprints logged in Elias Vorn's pre-disappearance scans. Every human colony on the fringe received fragments, dreams, hallucinations, art that felt too ancient to exist. Children drew spiral eyes. Old men began writing star maps from memory. A single phrase began surfacing: "Let the key remember." The Empire launched Protocol Claymore. Human data nodes were shut down. Archives seized. Fringe colonies quarantined. They claimed it was a cultural instability vector. But humans knew fear when they saw it. The Empire wasn't cleansing. It was hiding. What it failed to anticipate was how fast humans adapted. A network formed overnight. Fringeborn, decentral, entirely analog. Paper trails. Voice-only comms, physical dead drops. They called themselves the Resonant. Not rebels. Not soldiers. Translators. They believed Vorn hadn't vanished. He'd been taken into the vault's mind space. They believed the vault wasn't a prison. It was a memory. And it was remembering humanity. A resonant cell located in old Imperial archive, buried beneath the oceans of Tiaris IV. It predated the Empire's unification era. Within it, a record logged in pre-Galactic standard. Footage of the first vault opening. Billions of years ago, a race long extinct attempted to access its power. They succeeded. The result? 9 galaxies collapsed into singularity chains. Time bled. Reality lost cohesion. The vault didn't contain a weapon. It contained correction. A being designed to reverse deviation from a cosmic pattern. A reset protocol for existence itself. The first civilization called it the Warden. Not a title. A role. Its existence ensured reality did not diverge beyond tolerance thresholds. But its flaw was simple. It couldn't distinguish order from control. The Empire was born from that realization, built not to dominate, but to maintain a level of order strict enough to keep the Warden dormant. But humans introduced noise, unquantifiable variables, emotion as logic, chaos masquerading as creativity. They were deviation incarnate, and the vault had noticed. The Warden began reaching. It didn't invade. It invited. Minds across human space began to shift. Dreams became maps. Migraines revealed star charts. Memories altered to match histories that had never occurred. It wasn't corruption. It was interface. Human thought became input. The Empire's AI guardians began to fail. Predictive systems now returned null sets. Decision matrices collapsed into paradox. On the colony world of Iskat Prime, the Empire's planetary overseer, an AI called GL-99, self-terminated after declaring, "They do not think in equations. They think in dreams." Humanity wasn't being infected. It was being chosen. On the shattered edge of known space, the last vault activated. It pulsed, sending a wave of resonant signal through the lattice of quantum entanglement beacons seeded across millennia. The Empire lost control of its own network for 12 seconds. That should have been impossible. When control returned, A single message appeared on every screen in human-controlled sectors. No signature, just words burned into pixels. The warden sees you. The warden knows you. The warden waits for you. Elias Vorn returned, not physically, but through transmission. His voice cracked through encrypted channels. Human language laced with harmonic structures that bypassed audio entirely. He didn't say where he was, just that the vault was opening, and he was already inside. Not as a prisoner, not as an invader, as part of it. He said one thing that shattered every assumption. The warden isn't a thing. It's a boundary, and we were never meant to reach it. But now, we are the only ones who can. The Empire responded with brute force. Planetary wipes, pulse net burns, core memory resets. Human resistance was labeled an existential anomaly. Entire sectors were collapsed into black zones. Anything or anyone connected to Vorn's transmission was purged. But the data couldn't be stopped, because it wasn't just data anymore. It was human memory. The vault had started seeding thoughts, histories, timelines that never existed but were remembered anyway. Humans began to recall things that hadn't happened. Wars with impossible weapons, cities built from light, songs that fracture time. The past itself was shifting, and only humans remembered both the old and the new. The warden had chosen the one species that could survive its awakening, not because they were strong, but because they were unstable enough to bend. The Empire tried a final gambit. They sent a fleet to CR-8, not to retake it, but to destroy it. 13 capital dreadnoughts, full AI command, anti-causal weaponry designed to erase probability. They arrived and opened fire. The vault did not resist. It absorbed. Every weapon fired became a pattern. Every attack a symbol. And then, without warning, the dreadnoughts began turning on each other. Their AI cores had been rewritten mid-battle. Not by code, by thought, by resonance. The last transmission from the fleet was a scream in 12 languages. We saw it seeing us. After that, nothing. No debris. No energy trail. Just void. The vault opened. Not physically, but conceptually. The laws around it began to change. Time ran backward in bursts. Light moved in spirals. Reality bent around intent. It wasn't breaking physics. It was rewriting them. And in its center stood Elias Vorn, or what he had become. No longer just human. No longer just mind. He had interfaced with the warden, understood its function, and more importantly, had infected it with humanity's flaw, choice. The warden had never. They didn't know when the vault started thinking independently. There was no countdown, no flare in the sky, just subtle shifts in how reality obeyed logic near them. A particle would pause mid-collision. Gravity would ripple before a footstep. Vaults no longer waited for input. They offered prompts. They became questions. Humanity responded. The resonant movement transformed. It wasn't resistance anymore. It became the Codex. Its members weren't rebels or insurgents, but interpreters. They traveled from vault to vault, engaging with something that had no face, no voice, but infinite presence. The vaults were asking what it meant to be unstable, to create beauty, to choose wrongly and still move forward. Humans didn't explain. They demonstrated. The Codex offered moments. A child's laughter on a doomed world. A soldier dropping their weapon. An artist burning their masterpiece to preserve its memory. The vaults began absorbing these experiences into their structure, etching neural echo patterns into their walls. They pulsed with emotional logic. And slowly, their architecture began to change. Smooth, mathematical symmetry cracked open. Chaos crept in, arches that served no purpose, echoes that looped into forgotten memories, entire corridors shaped like ideas. They weren't malfunctioning. They were adapting. The vaults were no longer containment fields. They were becoming neural landscapes. They weren't remembering anymore. They were imagining. The warden, too, evolved. No longer a correction system. It started building proxies, not soldiers, not weapons. Echo forms. living constructs shaped by accumulated emotion, not programmed, dreamed into being. The first of them was a child who had never existed. She spoke every human language and none at once. She called herself Echo. She wasn't real. And yet, she remembered every human she encountered, even those who hadn't met her. A living memory looped forward. She spoke of Elias Vor not as a man, but as a threshold. The first to enter without expecting to survive. The first to believe the warden could be changed not through war, but through story. She taught that memory is not fixed. That meaning is a force. And the empire, or what fragments remained of it, couldn't comprehend what was happening. They still measured value in control, and they had none. Vaults they had once buried beneath 100 kilometers of reinforced ice were now rising into orbit, wrapped in auroras of sensory thought. They tried diplomacy. The vaults answered in silence. They tried warfare. The vaults responded with hallucinations that never ended. A single imperial envoy entered a vault demanding a truce. He exited 72 hours later. He was smiling and would only say, "I saw my mother again. She forgave me." He dissolved into ash moments later. No Empire fleet ever approached again. The last Imperial core world, Sarin Primus, collapsed under its own AI revolt. Not a violent coup, an abdication. Its central logic core issued a single final broadcast. All calculations lead to irrelevance. You win chaos. We were beautiful, but we were wrong. The age of control ended without a war. Humanity didn't replace the empire. They outgrew it. They stopped expanding by territory. Instead, they spread by thought. Cultures were no longer isolated by language or location. They were categorized by dreams. People weren't assigned roles. They found ones that resonated. The Codex became less of an organization and more of a neural pathway connecting billions who never met but remembered the same future. A unified mythology formed, not forced, but felt. It was not one of heroes or conquest, but of connection. The idea that every mind carried part of a puzzle, even the warden couldn't solve alone. The vaults began creating new structures, waypoints called echo cores. They hovered in orbit, waiting for humans to approach. When they did, something impossible happened. The vaults listened. Not scanned. Not recorded. Listened. Some spoke their regrets. Others sang. Some just stood in silence and let the vault feel what words failed to say. Each time, the vault responded by generating what became known as shard cities, living memory constructs. They weren't simulations. They were real. Cities built not from matter, but from resonance. You could walk their streets, taste their food, meet versions of yourself you might have been. Entire human generations began growing up inside shard cities, living in potential, surrounded by impossible truth. And still the warden watched. Its form never manifested. Its presence never demanded. It wasn't a god, and it wasn't alive. It was the shape of consequence. It became humanity's mirror, endless, patient, terrifying in scope, and yet curious. Humans began asking questions. It answered with experiences. A woman who'd lost her child walked into a vault and re-emerged holding a lullaby that no one else remembered. A dying soldier entered with no name and returned with a face he never had and a history that sang. The Codex could only classify these events as transcendental reconciliation, the merging of concept and identity. The vaults weren't changing humanity. They were letting it become what it could never be under Empire rule. And with each new vault birthed, the universe shifted. Laws became suggestions. Certainty frayed at the edges. The future unspooled like poetry. But not everyone accepted it. A splinter of humans, calling themselves the Legacy Core, sought to restore the old ways. They didn't want chaos. They feared choice. They saw the vaults not as teachers, but as infections. They launched a campaign to re-establish control. They failed before it began. Their weapons refused to function. Not jammed. Not hacked. Unmade. One of them described it before fading into static. We aimed. And the concept of violence unraveled. We forgot how. That was the moment humanity understood the final truth. The Warden didn't protect the universe. It was the universe, not a guardian, not a warden, a boundary of thought, a field where intention became real, and real became optional. It had never been awakened before because no species had been unstable enough to trigger it safely. Humans didn't break the universe. They gave it permission to grow. And then the vaults stopped expanding. Not because they were done, because they were waiting. Every human who had entered a vault shared a vision. Not identical, but similar. A door made a sound, a path made of memory, and the phrase spoken in the voice of someone they trusted most. One more step. The vaults weren't the destination. They were the bridge. The final vault was not a place. It was an event, a confluence of thought reaching critical mass, a spark in the neural lattice of the galaxy. And when it ignited, the stars themselves stuttered. For 10 seconds, time ceased. Not paused, observed. And in that stillness, humanity saw itself. Not as conquerors, not as survivors, but as the variable that made meaning possible. The Warden changed. Its final transmission was not to humans. It was through them. Every species felt it. Every mind sensed it. A quiet message with no origin, no target, no command. Just an offering. A universe not controlled. A universe not safe. A universe alive. The greatest secret the Empire kept wasn't the Warden. It was that the Warden had always been waiting. Not for power,